You have that uniform on, you're wearing that badge, we're going to give you the training, and we're going to give you the medical skills to stay in the fight. You're the line in the sand. If you go down, who else is there to stop that threat? So you need to say to yourself, whether it's the fifth breath or the last breath, I'm going to fight until the end.
I'm super excited to have this guy on the show who is finally retired, but really you're not, because you're about to roll right into it again. But more importantly, you brought my favorite bourbon, and if it wasn't like 7 a.m. right now, we'd be drinking some Blanton's.
Absolutely. No, I've followed your career for quite some time, Colin. I know that you're a big bourbon and whiskey fan, and Blanton's is my all-time favorite whiskey, and I only felt it apropos to bring it for you. And I also wanted to present with you, because you're such a big proponent of law enforcement, I wanted to extend you this challenge coin from my former police department.
Thanks, brother.
And
so let's dive in right there. What is your former police department?
I was with the Connecticut State Capitol Police for 19 years, and then I did a year prior to that with the Department of Corrections. But because they're both state agencies, the time more or less transferred over from one side of the house to the other, and wrapped up my 20-year career on April 1st, and that's not an April Fool's joke.
Awesome. Where are we off to now?
The City of Naples Police Department, which is the west coast side of Florida, and I will be getting sworn in on the 29th of April.
You know, I can't wrap my head around why everybody retires and leaves Connecticut and goes to Florida. I'm sure it has nothing to do with our taxes out here.
No, nothing at all.
So let's jump right into one of the things that we've talked about a lot is that training has been vital to you, and something that, as we see nationwide, everybody demands it. Nobody wants to pay for it. There's been little innovation over the years, but you rolled out a program that is really helping save lives. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it's bittersweet too, because we are now rolling into the 20-year anniversary of Columbine, and as everybody knows, that changed the model as to what law enforcement does during an active shooter type situation. Once I became the firearm instructor about 10 years ago, I started thinking about, instead of static drills, which are normally the course of action that law enforcement does during a training curriculum, we adopted a more of a moving and shooting training curriculum. So we developed a course of fire, which is familiar to a lot of law enforcement, and military, which is a bound and overwatch drill, where you have two officers starting at the same point, but during the course of fire, they actually have to advance in front of the firing line where the other officer is shooting, obviously with distance between the both of them so that they do not shoot either one of them. And also a firearms instructor is dedicated to that person as they go through that course of fire. And being at the legislative office building and the state capitol, obviously I tried to mirror the training to what the LOB or the capitol looked like on a course of fire, and we would go from point A to point B, continue to shoot, and then actually once we bound forward and got to an area where we were no longer going to advance, and now the scenario changed where if you now had to retreat and go back to an area of safety, we taught them how to move in that bound and overwatch, not only forward, but also in reverse.
You know, one of the things that a lot of my boys have talked about is that policing is hurry up and wait. There's a lot of downtime when, you know, it's normal humdrum every day, and then there's that crisis moment. Mm-hmm. And in that crisis moment, even there is so much hurry up and wait. It's, you know, active shooting, running, and then stopping and waiting, and that's where some of that static training comes into play. But there's so much of that active component when things hit the fan. Is that how you sort of developed the concept of this?
Yes, because, and we've seen it in other active shooter type scenarios, the Hollywood shooting in Florida at the school, where the school resource officer was more or less outside for a very long period of time before he actually advanced to where the shooting was taking place. We now, as law enforcement, we never would like to go into a situation alone, but we now have to train our officers that you may be the one person going in because you don't have a team with you, or a second officer or a third officer with you. And I know that West Hartford PD just did a training curriculum where they brought school resource officers in when West Hartford was out on spring break, and utilized some schools for just that type of training.
You know, unfortunately, so many changes in officer safety don't come until after something catastrophic happens. So, for example, we had Officer Jesse Hartnett up here, who was the Philly cop who was shot in his patrol car while sitting at the stoplight by the terrorist. And he had in his, it was either on his side or in his trunk, he had a couple of tourniquets, but it wasn't department policy then that you had to have tourniquets on your person. The policy changed after that because those tourniquets arguably saved his life. What does it take outside of a catastrophic incident like that to begin changing policy? Is it a money play? Is it a power play?
We react when something happens. So until we start thinking proactive, then we're always going to be behind that curve. I know that our agency basically outfitted tourniquets in all of our medical bags throughout the buildings and the cruisers. Officers like myself elected to purchase our own and carry it on our belts. Now, when you see an officer that has a tourniquet on their belt, that is specifically for them. That means, hey, I've gotten shot in the leg, I've gotten shot in the arm, or some type of extremity that would allow me to put my own tourniquet on and continue in the fight. The tourniquets that were implemented in medical bags and in the cruisers were for mass casualty situations for civilians.
You know, something that you just said has always jumped out at me, and this is the difference between a sheep and a sheepdog. You mentioned putting that tourniquet on so that you can stay in the fight. And I think your average person would put that tourniquet on to not die and to make it until they get help. And yet this is something that nobody talks about, right? They don't talk about the fact that it's not an option to just end it and to go, okay, I'm not going to die, that's it. Like, you guys are putting it on so you could stay in the fight. And people don't think about that mindset. Like, you have to be a little screwed up to be a cop. And I mean that in a very positive way.
Yeah, and that's where our training on the range also evolved to thinking that, listen, you have that uniform on, you're wearing that badge, we're going to give you the training and we're going to give you the medical skills to stay in the fight. You're the line in the sand. If you go down, who else is there to stop that threat? So you need to say to yourself, whether it's the fifth breath or the last breath, I'm going to fight until the end. And that's the mindset that you have to have. It's, situational awareness is another one. We have always taught, listen, when you're in the cruiser or you're on your post, think about the what if. Play a scenario in your head. Don't be so entrenched in our cell phone devices that we can look at and take our attention away from the things that are happening around us. But it's not just law enforcement that has to be aware. It's people walking in your day-to-day lifestyle.
No doubt. Brother, I appreciate you coming out here, man. It's nice to finally connect in person. So wish you the best of luck on the trip out to Florida.
Thank you so very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm very happy that we were able to do this.
Awesome. Man, we'll see you. I'm going to come visit you in Florida, especially in the winter time.
Absolutely.
Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hitting that share button. God bless America.